I'm in Manchester. The heartbeat of the Industrial Revolution. The factories and spinning mills, music and football. This city's had it all. But it's also known for much more. The poverty of its gritty ancestral past. Victorian gangs and unsolved crime. Today, I'll be delving into a story that shook Manchester to the core. And over a decade later, it's still splitting opinions.
So what did you think when Greater Manchester Police came out and said, look, we've investigated this thoroughly, there's no serial killer, it's a myth?
The bodies have piled up, and over the years it's never really been solved. Is there really someone out there? Someone responsible for these murders? Somebody lurking in the shadows of Manchester's semi-subterranean underworld? Ladies and gents, this is the story of the Manchester Pusher.
The Manchester Pusher.
For years, there's been a very unsettling and sinister rumour floating around the city of Manchester. An elusive serial killer could potentially be on the prowl, lurking in the shadows down the dimly lit canal paths that are frequented by so many. He's been nicknamed the Pusher, although he's never been caught, and there is very little eyewitness accounts. Many even question his existence. Some say that he doesn't exist. Others say it could possibly be hype from the media, just to sell a story. But many people do in fact believe he's real. As of 2015, the story went viral when a disturbing statistic was released.
We're having this discussion about the likelihood that there's a serial killer on the loose in the city. Do you think we've got a serial killer on our hands?
85 bodies had been recovered from the Manchester waterways since 2008. And 28 of these returned an open verdict and remain suspiciously unexplained. Any of these cases can be concluded that the cause of death was purely accidental. Intoxication, drugs, stupidity, poor lighting and slippy conditions, and plunging into an ice cold canal in the dead of night can make the body react in many ways. Shock. Hypothermia is also a big killer. After walking down the stretch of the canal, the barriers are hit and miss. They seem to be there in certain areas, and then they just stop, leaving large areas of the path unprotected, which enhances the chances of having some sort of accident. Millions of pounds have been spent over the years by the council to better the city on artwork and sculptures. The list goes on. But given that the death rate on the canals is so high, very little has been done on the safety of pedestrians down the canal. But there is that small percentage of these cases that really don't make sense, and they are suspicious. And many of these victims' families believe there was definitely foul play involved. Please approach this video with an open mind, and if you don't believe in it, then that's absolutely fine. But if there is in fact somebody out there with murderous intentions, then it's very alarming, to say the least. And something must be done about it.
Back out, and I'm in the bustling city of Manchester today, and I'm uncovering the story of the Manchester pusher. Does he exist? Now, over the years I've read into this and I've seen it. It's been well documented on TV, and it's been documented in the media, in the papers and everything. And at first I was thinking maybe it's just, you know, maybe it's just people coming out of nightclubs that are drunk, young people, possibly on drugs, pissed up, and they fell in. They hadn't had the wits about them, and they've gone straight in. And a number of things can happen to you. Shock, hypothermia. But I've just literally scaled the full length of this canal, all the way down. And I'm pretty sure if I went in here, I could get out. And like I say, the more that I've scratched the surface with this video, that's what I thought. I thought basically it was just a load of people being drunk. But the more that I've scratched the surface of this video, and I've delved into people's backstories, things just don't add up. There's a lot of conflicting police reports. And most of the people that have died in here, their parents don't seem to think it was just a simple case of, oh, he fell in and he died. Most of them think there was definitely foul play involved. And like I say, there's some of the reports from eyewitness accounts to people going in here. A fella that was biking down here on his way home, out of the shadows just emerged this figure that apparently like stuck his arm out, clotheslined him straight into the canal, and he fell in terrified. And as he scrambled to get out, he stood there all in black, this figure, and he booted him back in, you know. And it wasn't for the sound, if it wasn't for the sound of the police siren that flew past him, he wouldn't have ran away. This guy came out, luckily he survived, and he told his story that he encountered the pusher and that the pusher's real. So it's like this sort of modern day, it has the mystique in a way, a little bit Jack the Ripper-y. Obviously totally different kinds of deaths. The guy just walked past me, absolutely jumped on the skin. Thought it was the pusher. But yeah, totally contrast, different eras, but it has that mystique of this phantom sort of elusive character that's could potentially be lurking in the shadows. And like I say, the more that I've delved into the story, the more I don't think it is a case of it's just a simple cut and shut, oh, he fell in and he drowned. Now, I'm not gullible enough to believe that every single account is the pusher. I wasn't born yesterday, you know. I don't believe it for 1 minute. But that small percentage of people that stories just don't add up, things don't make sense, and the contrast in the police reports too. I think the police don't really, if they can't have a logical explanation for it, the police stub it out, and it's easy enough for them to just say he drowned, because most of these cases that are unsolved. They're open verdicts. It could have been a number of things. So, like I say, I wasn't born yesterday. I don't think that for 1 minute all these cases are legit and they're all the pusher. But the small percentage of cases that I do believe, you know, it could be this potential murderer roaming around Manchester in the sort of semi-subterranean underworld. And hopefully this little video will help put things into perspective for you. And what I want you to do is comment below what you actually think. Do you believe there is a pusher by the end of this video? And I'll make a conclusion too. So without further ado, I'm going to give you the story of David Plunkett.
David Plunkett was only 21 years old when his body was recovered from the Manchester Ship Canal. An inquest was conducted and the cause of death was that David accidentally drowned. But this was to the disbelief of his parents. They still believe that there is many unanswered questions. David set off to Manchester on a night out with his mate Michael, but David never returned. Around 1:30 AM, David's mum Anne received a phone call from his friend Michael, and he said that the pair had lost each other. But Anne reassured Michael that she'd called David on his mobile. After 3 attempts of ringing his phone, it was suddenly answered. Anne began to question David, but there was no response, just silence. And this went on for around 8 minutes. The next sound that they would hear would haunt her and her husband for the rest of their lives. At 4:30 AM, the phone went dead. What did David see that night to make him so terrified? Did he come face to face with the person who took his life?
Made me feel as though David had seen something which had terrified him.
Was David hiding from someone? And does that explain the silence for 8 minutes? Why would the post-mortem reveal that he accidentally drowned if his parents had heard him petrified moments before?
David? Can you hear me? David?
Surely someone or something played a factor in David's death. David was missing for 2 weeks before his body was found, less than a mile away from the place that he was on the night out. The inquest also suggested that alcohol was a factor in his death. Was it just the case that David was terribly drunk? Did he slip and fall into the canal? Even though his parents never heard the sound of a splash or water? Or was there something much more sinister to it? Either way, we still don't have a definitive answer. I think losing a child is the hardest thing that a parent could ever go through. And when researching these stories, I couldn't help but be affected by it. My heart goes out to all the families, and of course, the victims themselves.
So what do you think about that? It's a horrific and terrifying story that poor David must have gone through, and you can sort of let your imagination run wild with this one. His poor parents, you know, they've had to suffer since his death, and they don't have any significant closure on what happened to their son. And the thing that really freaked me out was the way that they explained this harrowing scream. It was like a howling scream, like he literally had saw his killer. And for him to be so quiet, hidden, they think he possibly, or the detective thought possibly he was hiding, hence why he was so quiet. And then all of a sudden there's just this gut-wrenching, gut-curdling scream that came from him. And did he come face to face with his killer? And like I say, there's not much that they went off the body, like how he died. It was sort of, there was no evidence to suggest he was beaten up or he was attacked or killed. And it has got that vibe down here though. Like, I've been walking around here for a bit now, and it is eerie, so at night time I can imagine it being pretty weird. And there could be a few oddballs down here. But yeah, like I say, the core story of David is, the fact of the matter is, we'll never really know. We'll never really know. And this was sort of, when I've read into it and watched the documentaries on it, this is what sparked me to do this video. I thought, this is a story that needs to be told, it needs to be uncovered more, and hopefully maybe people might have you know, some evidence, or they might be able to shed some light on it, and hopefully one day the parents will get closure if in fact, you know, there is a pusher. But my heart goes out to him and his family completely, and all the victims.
When Greater Manchester Police came out and said, look, we've investigated this thoroughly, there's no serial killer, it's a myth.
They've not investigated it as though they were connected, and I think they also don't think they can just close it down and say, no, it's a myth, and leave it at that. I think they should have a look into it.
Souvik Pal was a 19-year-old student from India, and he was studying in Manchester. He disappeared on New Year's Eve 2012 after a night out at the Warehouse Project nightclub. After 22 days of Souvik being missing, his body was recovered from the Bridgewater Canal. CCTV footage caught Souvik's last few moments alive. And he appeared with a man who had never been identified. His father thinks the unidentified man is responsible for his son's death. His body was pulled out of the water just 50 yards away from where he'd been partying with his mates that night. This was after an apparent extensive police search in the area. At 10:55, Souvik was ejected from the nightclub by one of the bouncers as he jumped the queue for the toilet. The camera footage shows Souvik outside the club with another man, who's never been identified to this day. On one of the cameras, it catches what is believed to be Souvik attempting to climb over the fence to get back into the nightclub. But the fence is on the edge of the camera, and he disappeared from sight. At around 11:30, the next piece of CCTV footage is shown, which shows a man walking away, alone. Police are convinced that this is the unidentified man who was with Souvik only moments before. Souvik would never be seen alive again, and his parents believe the unidentified man holds vital information to the whole case, and that he's responsible for the death of the son.
So, I'm sort of approaching what is known as Canal Street in Manchester, and it's also known as the Gay Village. And for a stint around 2015, I think, maybe for a couple of years, this was a bit of a hot spot for apparent pusher victims. Now, there is this theory that, I don't know if you remember him in the newspaper, and he was all over the news. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. He was called Reynard Singer. Now, he was convicted for over 150 sexual assaults on young gay men, and you know, his method was that he would drug them in the nightclubs and, you know, do his sick little deed that he did. Now, as you can see down here, it is really sort of dingy, and people do come out of there and, you know, they go for a quick wee sometimes on the way down here, but it's also known for other things. I think you're catching my drift, and I hope I'm not offending anybody that you know, you've got to be careful what you say these days, because there's so many people that are so touchy about things. But yeah, there was a theory that this Reynard, you know, maybe it was him. Well, like I say, this Reynard Singer, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. He went on a spree for ages. Now, he was deliberately sexually assaulting people, and he was drugging them. Now, there is a theory that it's quietened off since he's been in prison. Whether it was him or not, I don't think we'll ever know. He's never going to admit to it, is he, if it was him? But I don't think we'll ever know. Now, I've just noticed that there is barrier rails round here, and I'll shoot you in on a thing up there I've just seen. That shows that this spot where I am was a hot spot for assaults, or whatever you want to call them. Now, all the way down here now, like I say, the barrier rail does stop here, and it stops all the way down. I will pan you that way in a second so you can see. But I sat and had a think about it the other day, and you know, if there is a serious breach, if these are all coincidences that young men are falling in, you know, then there's a serious breach in the health and safety of Manchester by Manchester City Council. And I saw that they did put these temporary sort of plastic, really crap plastic bollards down. Now, I'm big on, I love the Victorian period. I have nothing but respect for it. Now, back in the day, when they would plan a building or they would make some sort of construction, they sort of always over budgeted it, and they all over engineered everything. And that's why a lot of these buildings that you see today that are still standing from the Victorian period, they're grand, they're beautiful to look at, because if they did over budget it, they would use that budget to make that building the best that they could. Now, I just think, like, you know, when you see the added features, the gargoyles, the beautiful sort of stonemason work that they would introduce into these buildings, and it just looks stunning. Even today when you go around, they're beautiful and they're still standing. Now, the Victorians did things right, so Manchester City Council, by putting down these little plastic bollards as a makeshift sort of to stop people from falling in, is disgusting in my eyes. If there is a breach in health and safety, massively, then these should be incorporated through the full canal system. And why does it have to be a piece of plastic? They spend so much money on, I'm all for artwork. I think it's great that you put money back into the city to make it look good, but having these makeshift bollards, just, I'll show you a little clip of a picture that I found of it, and I just think it's disgusting. And back in the day, the Victorians, when they did it right, and they would have put these railings. Why does it have to be ugly? That's what I'm trying to say. We could have this railing system that goes all the way down, that could have like the Manchester bee crest involved in it, and it doesn't have to be ugly and cheap. Why? And I'm sorry I'm on one because it really does get to me. It doesn't have to be ugly, it doesn't have to be cheap. It can be beautiful to look at, and it can be a thing where you go, wow, Manchester really does look cool. It's really fitting to what it stood for back in the day. But that's my little rant over, and I know I've come off the topic, but I thought I'd just put that bit in.
There's no serial killer, it's a myth.
Another story had caught my attention, and even though it wasn't in Manchester, it had all the hallmarks of a Pusher case. A 42-year-old man and his 19-year-old son set out at 6:15 AM on Saturday, the 16th of June, 2018. They had planned to spend the day magnet fishing, a hobby that involves trawling the waterways for metal, using a super magnet attached to a rope. Officers were alerted at 11:30 that very morning by a passerby who noticed clothing, mobile phone, camera and car keys on the side of the canal. Police divers were requested. To their horror, found both father and son dead. They was vertically submerged under the water, close to each other, in the Huddersfield Canal. West Yorkshire Police was baffled as to how this could happen, and Inspector Carlton Young said this: "We really don't know what happened. One of them may have fallen in, and the other one had tried to help, but that's only an assumption. We may never know the exact circumstances of what happened." Water can be unpredictable, and even the most strongest of swimmers can drown. But what really happened that day? No signs of struggle. Did one of them fall in and try to save the other, but both sadly drowned? Or was there more to it? If the Pusher really does exist, was it him? Had he moved areas? After all, in the grand scheme of things, it isn't really that far from Manchester. And did he feel the urge to strike again? Or was this just another freak accident that's been the answer to so many of the deaths in Manchester? Only the two men will know what really happened that day, and unfortunately, we'll never know. Having done a lot of research on the Pusher, it's really hard to come to a definitive conclusion. I've merely highlighted a few of these cases that have been reported by media outlets, and to me, they do appear very suspicious, and they need further investigation. But the reality of the situation is we'll never truly know, unless someone's caught red-handed in the act. Another thing that needs to be given consideration is that these cases stretch the vast canal network of Manchester, and they didn't just happen in one spot, which can only mean a few things. Number one, there is a Pusher. There is someone responsible. He's either very elusive or very lucky not to have been caught. But eventually, the Pusher's luck will run out, and ultimately, justice will be served. Secondly, these are accidents and accidental deaths. Intoxication, poor judgment, drugs, carelessness, or maybe a combination of all of them. but the strange circumstances surrounding them is hard to conclude, and a massive step forward would be to minimise these things happening in the future. And an improvement on the canal ways is pivotal. Better lighting, a proper barrier system, and CCTV in operation for the safety of the public. And thirdly, these cases could be a series of muggings over the years. And these muggings could have gone wrong, explaining the death of some of these cases. Some of the victims have been found with no wallet and mobile phone, which makes me wonder, have they been mugged? It's been really difficult to make this video, and I can't put into words how hard it must be for the people that have lost their loved ones. But if there really is something going on down our canals, whether it's the pusher, accidents or muggings, then I hope something can be done about it. The last thing we'd want to hear is the death of another person and another family without a loved one.
So the question on everyone's lips is there a pusher? This is my personal opinion. Now, is there a pusher? I've given this a lot of thought. I've listened to podcasts, I've watched hours and hours of documentaries online, I've read about the report and I've followed it over the years. And is there somebody responsible for the open verdict cases, the 28 plus cases? Is there one person solely sort of trawling this canal at night time, pushing people in and not letting them out and killing them? I can't rule that out, but my personal opinion, given that it's such a vast stretch and this canal network is pretty big, it stretches like miles, it could potentially be a series of assaults and muggings gone wrong. The one that really stands out to me is the David Plunkett situation. I think that David was wrong place, wrong time, possibly been chased, and the reason why he was quiet on the phone is that he was hiding. And then, you know, hearing him, how petrified he were, you know, no one knows you better than your mum and dad, and they're convinced there was foul play involved and that David came sort of face to face with his killer. Now, did the guy brutally kill him? No, he didn't. If he did, if there was somebody involved, did he brutally kill him? No. But did he shove him into the water and not let him out? Did David have an altercation when he was leaving the venue? We don't know. But did he have an altercation with someone that followed him outside? We don't know. Did he get shoved into the canal and was he not allowed out and died as a result of that? I personally think he did. I think somebody did that to him. And like I say, some of the other cases, they don't add up. But I don't necessarily think it's just one person doing it. I think it's possibly, over the years, a series of muggings. Now, don't forget, this is Manchester. These are dark, dark canal paths at night time. There is sort of little gangways where you can hide in them. It's a prime spot for muggers and assaults, and I personally think they are results of that. But yeah, this is one of them, and what I will say to you is, please, this is just my opinion, but please, I'd love to know your thoughts. I would like to know what you think. Is there somebody out there doing this solely on their own? I personally don't think it's one person doing it, but could it happen? Absolutely, it could be. And if you believe that, that's entirely down to you. You could think that this whole thing doesn't exist and it's a series of people being stupid and drunk and falling into the canal, and you know, the effects of hypothermia, etc., kicking in. You're all entitled to your opinion, but what I will say is, please comment down below. I would love to know, and I go through them and I do read them and I take everything on board, but that is just my personal opinion. I think they're possibly a series of very bad assaults, and I did watch a little bit on the forensic side of things too. You know, with these assaults, some of them, they were found with no wallet, mobile phone, etc., which would indicate a mugging to me. And when on the forensic side of it, when the body does go into the water, DNA is straight away starts to be washed off, so the fingerprints, etc., the process starts as soon as you hit the water. So it's very difficult for the police to, you know, say that it was a murder, etc. The only thing that really doesn't add up is the police deny that there is a pusher, and then on an article that was written, one of the policemen was reported to say that this case is a typical pusher. Someone's arguing there. Someone's kicking off. So I am sorry about that. I just had to cut off for a second then. Two fellas were going to have it out in the car park at the side of me. They were both arguing over a skip. You know, typical Manchester, innit? Anything can happen. A bit like this story, really. But yeah, what I was going to say is that the police, they don't believe that the pusher exists. They think it's a series of unfortunate, horrific accidents, you know, and young people have lost their lives. But the one thing that sort of had me scratching my head is, did the police know more now? They, like I say, they have no involvement at all with the pusher. Don't believe he exists. But a report came out, one of these victims fell in, and a spokesman for the police, I'll try and add it into the video if I can for copyright issues, but if I can't, I can't. The police have pulled this body out, etc., and they've said this is typical work of the Manchester pusher. And everyone was like, hold on a minute, you don't think the Manchester pusher exists? And there was a bit like, oh shit. So do the police know something that we don't? You know, quite possibly. And I think off the record, some of these interviews that I've seen off the record, obviously no identification of the police officer that said it, but some of them have said, look, we do suspect that there is a pusher, but we can't prove it. We have sort of no evidence to prove it. But like I say, just, I would love to know your thoughts. If you could drop a comment down below, brilliant. And I'm going to leave it here. So until the next time, take care, take it easy, and I'll see you all soon. Right, so I've just been walking down this stretch of the canal and I've just clocked something on my right hand side here. Now, he was given the name the Manchester Pusher by the media, and other names were circulating around, you know, the Canal Pusher. One of them was Jack the Dipper and another one was Jack the Dripper. And I've just clocked this piece of graffiti art down this very sort of sinister looking skinny alleyway. And I'll just flip the camera around now and show you. I just saw that, Jack the Dripper. Now is that just a bit of sick graffiti art? Or am I looking too deep into this? Is it like a little marker? Is this where one of the victims was actually pushed in? Who knows? Very strange. Very weird. And whoever's done that has got a pretty sick sense of humour.